All right, fam, welcome back. Marsha Lanio here. I am your favorite shift relationship strategist where I help Black Christian women that are sick and tired of being sick and tired of trying to figure out how to be in a healthy, loving relationship. They are sick and tired of trying to figure out who to date and how to attract the right man for herself. And I also help women that are sick and tired of being sick and tired of really just bumping their head time after time. So that's who I am and that's what I help. So now we're going to talk about today the 13 lessons that I learned from my first divorce. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And isn't it funny because a lot of times we don't do this. We do not sit back and evaluate the areas that we need help in, the areas that we are weak in, as well as acknowledge and even pay homage to the areas that we thrive in. So I want to specifically talk about the lessons that I learned, but also giving you a small portion of the backstory, which is about my life, right? It is about my upbringing. And so if you've been following me for any amount of time, then you know that I come from a large family. You know that, again, this is have excuse me. You know that I have been married before, have been divorced before, and just going through all of the ups and downs of life and trying to figure things out. So a little bit about me. I was child number 5 to my mom, which was just about the middle child. And we didn't have a lot of conversations about dating. We didn't have a lot of conversations about relationships. We didn't have a lot of conversations about ourselves, so learning who we are. We didn't have a lot of positive affirmations. Not that there were negative ones, there just weren't any positive ones that I can recall. It was just kind of waking up, going throughout our day, not necessarily getting poured into by my mom, by my parents, by my teachers, by my aunts, by anybody that I know. And this is not a dig at my mom. It's not a dig at my dad. It is just me allowing you into a little bit of background of my life, right? So with that being said, our parents, let me just say this as well, because our parents can only give us what they have available to give us, right? So all of the things that I went through in life are mine. I am no longer, because I did at one point, I am no longer blaming my parents for the way specifically my divorce occurred, took place, all that other stuff. Because I firmly believe that the things that we go through in our lives are really not for us. It is for me to choose a way to help others not to have to go down the same path that I went down myself, right? So all of these 13 things that I learned after being married for 7 years the first time around is what I want to impart to you, so you can pay attention to your dating relationships. You can pay attention to the red flags. You can pay attention to all of the things that you need to become aware of before saying I do, right? If you are in a relationship where you're trying to figure things out, this will be a great way for you to use your discernment to say, that one's happening, or maybe none of them are happening and you are on your road, right? But also keep in mind, these are my things that I went through, right? So some of the things that you may be going through that could be a red flag, I might not mention here today because that wasn't a part of the things, it wasn't a part of the lessons that I took away from, right? Or the things that I had to deal with. That wasn't my plan. So just because the 13 things that I'm about to mention here is not on your list, it does not mean that you can just shake off everything is hunky-dory. You still have to do your own due diligence in using your God-given discernment to figure out if this person that you're choosing, if this relationship that you're in, and even marriage that you're in is the right relationship, is the right marriage, is the right person that you are supposed to be with, right? So take the things that I am imparting to you, right? Because I don't want to call them mistakes, because mistakes are lessons in disguise, right? So with that being said, let's jump into number 1. The first lesson that I took from my divorce was that I had no idea who I was. About zero clue. Who I was, what I wanted in life, what the big picture of what I wanted my life to look like, any of the goals. Well, I did have a goal, but it wasn't a broad goal. It was just meeting the right man, getting married, having children. And then I had a goal for a career. That was the gist of it. It wasn't what the daily life looked like. It wasn't what the dating, so the daily life and the dating life, it didn't have any structure or any design, any vision. There was no imagination beyond getting married, having children, having a home, and then a career, and having a family and doing that part of my life. There was no talks about the finances. There was no talks about it was just no talks about a lot of things again, right? So not knowing and not having a clue as to who Marshawn was at all. I was literally going along with the flow. And I'm sure that plenty of you out there can come into agreement with what I'm saying. You didn't have any idea who you were. You wanted to be accepted. You wanted to be loved. You didn't want to feel abandoned. You didn't want to feel the shame or guilt that you were feeling for whatever reason, right? You wanted to be heard, understood, and cherished in your relationship. I'm no different. That's exactly what I wanted. That was the baseline of what I wanted. Okay? And I actually did receive a lot of those things in my first marriage. Obviously, it didn't go the long haul, but those were a lot of things that I received. I didn't have a clear idea. It wasn't in my heart. It wasn't in my soul to manifest those things, to have imagination, right? To have vision about those particular things. I was receiving them kind of lackadaisy, if you will. So that's the first thing. I needed to find out who the heck I was in order to even have a conversation with my then husband about the treatment that I expected to have, right? Like, how can I impart the things that I wanted him to do and how to actually show me love, be there for me in the way that I felt like he seen me, like he saw me. You cannot impart information that you yourself are not aware of. So we must buckle down and figure out who the heck we are. Figure it out before you jump into a relationship, ideally, and especially before you get into a marriage. Lesson number 2 that I learned is that I can only control myself. Sis, you can only control yourself. Bruh, if you're out there listening, you can only control yourself. There is no way that you can control your spouse, your partner, your children. You can't control nobody but you. You cannot control anybody's actions. Or let me word it this way. The only person that you can control is yourself. The only person's actions that you can control is yourself. The only person's responses that you can control is your own. The only person's anger that you can control is your own. The only person's tongue that you can control is your own. The only person's emotion or emotions that you can control is your own. And let me back up to the tongue. As a lot of us have a tendency to react as soon as somebody come for you. And this is no different in your love relationship. Your spouse come for you, you're not about to let that happen because it may be a trigger for you. And so because you didn't handle your trauma, your past trauma, now it's a trigger for you. And now you just say all of the crazy, nasty, mean stuff that comes out of your mouth. So you can't control your spouse's tongue. You can only control your tongue. You can only control how you show up. You can only control what you are doing in the moment, right? You can only control you being selfish or not. So I had to learn that I could not control anybody but myself. Now, this one wasn't a huge one for me because I've never tried to control anybody, at least on a large scale, because controlling for me was trying to make sure that we always did things that I wanted to do first. Yeah, first. So it wasn't big control, like you need to call me wherever you go, and if you decide to leave that place, text me, call me that location or whatever. It wasn't anything to that degree, but it definitely, I'm not perfect, I am human, right? So there are definitely areas of control that I could have and actively am working on. So realizing that you are the only person that can control you and you cannot control anybody else will help you to ease any chances of you getting a divorce and becoming a part of the statistic. Because anytime your partner feels overly controlled, like they have to check in as if you are their parent or guardian, that is exhausting. It will drain the heck out of you. It will drain the love out of your relationship. And there's no way you are trying to go home to that day in and day out without trying to figure out how the heck you got here and how the heck to get out. No one wants to be controlled. You, okay, now flip it. You don't want to be controlled, but guess what? Your spouse also does not want to be controlled. Lesson number 3. I had to accept that my marriage had come to an end. Many people stay in their relationships and specifically their marriages way past the expiration date. And it's because of this acceptance piece. I'm not saying that you shouldn't fight for your marriage. There's no way that I'm saying that, because I'm solely for marriage. Absolutely. I hate the fact that divorces do happen, especially that I am a part of that statistic. However, there are times where we humans, us, choose our partners, and that relationship, and especially that marriage, should have never taken place. And because the two people that are in the relationship are not mature enough to do the work, to start their own healing journey individually as well as together, because those things do not occur, because the communication is little to none, it could be both, it could be one party, but someone in the relationship is making things tougher than they need to be. So once you accept the fact that this relationship is over, once you accept the fact that this marriage is over, then you can breathe. You can actually think clearly. You feel as though a weight is lifted off of your shoulder. Like really, you feel much lighter. It's like, and then the crazy thing about that is, once that happens, what you really are asking yourself internally and sometimes externally, you might even say it to a friend, family member, whatever, I should have did this a long time ago. But that not accepting that the relationship is over, and a lot of that backstory is the fear, but we're not going to go into fear today. The fear of the unknown, the fear that don't nobody else wants you, the fear that you get the child or children that are going to come along with you, etc. Whatever your fear is. Not accepting that the relationship has expired keeps a lot of us stuck, frustrated, annoyed, angry at ourselves as well as our spouses longer than it needs to be. That's when the resentment sets in. That's when the bitterness sets in. That's when all of this unnecessary stuff sets in, because you have yet to accept the fact that, hey, I shouldn't be here any longer. And a lot of us have the religious piece on us. You know that I'm absolutely a believer. I talk about Christianity and my God and Jesus. So with that being said, that piece that has been preached to us over and over and over again, and God not liking divorce and it's a sin, that is true, but there's also context to that. Now, I am not a Bible scholar, I'm not a pastor, so I'm not going to go down that road with you, because each of us have our interpretation of what it means. And if it's a sin, if it's not a sin, you shouldn't remarry and all this. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that comes with that. But the religious piece that is on us keeps us in those relationships long after the expiration date has occurred, because what I had to really understand is, did I, human Marshawn, bring me and ex-husband together, or did God bring us together? And if most of us, all of us, are truthful, God didn't have a hand in the choosing. God didn't have a hand in the choosing. And so I was wrestling, really wrestling with the decision to leave, to stay, to leave, to stay, to leave, to stay. And I was like, no, God didn't have a hand in this. Because the way the relationship was set up was all wrong. He wasn't acting like the leader, and nor was I following the leader. That's a whole nother video, because it really has nothing to do with submission, like so many men believe that it does. It doesn't. The entire relationship was set up wrong, because plenty of us, many of us, are edging God out. What they talk about, that ego, right? EGO, edging God out. We have a tendency to only bring God in, ask him to come in when there's a whole bunch of issues and there's problems. Not realizing that if we start there, if we start with God, if we start to work on ourselves and not be so anxious to jump into a relationship when someone is paying you attention in that way that you so crave it, if you use your God-given discernment and slow things down so you can really take off these rose-colored glasses and actually see the man, see the woman for who he is, for who she is, then a lot of these divorces wouldn't occur. I know it may be an unpopular opinion, but that's where we at. Lesson number 4 is realizing that I played a part in the demise of my marriage. And that is a hard pill to swallow for many of us, because we want to always point the finger and blame. His fault, his fault, his fault, his fault, his fault. He wouldn't do, he wouldn't do, he wouldn't do, he wouldn't do. Right? So instead of us pointing the finger, you have to realize the part that you played in the demise of every relationship that you were a part of. Because here's the thing, another realization. Now I bring it back to me, right? Because these are my lessons. I was the only common denominator in all of those relationships, including my marriage. So I couldn't have been as great as I thought I was if things went downhill. Now, there are always different pieces of the puzzle when things can happen and not happen and all this other stuff. However, you're still the only common denominator. So what part did you play? And I had to grapple with what part I actually played in the demise of my own marriage. Lesson number 5. You cannot be the only one fighting for the marriage to work. Now, I spoke about this before, but I want to really dig deeper into it right now, which is you both have to do your individual healing separately. You see? Not together, separate. Now, this is ideal because once you start working on yourself, once your mind starts to expand, you start to see what you're not bringing to the table, your flawed areas, which is a great thing, because that finger, that blaming finger, will actually roll back in. It'll roll back in, because you really start to become more aware and conscious of how you are showing up. And maybe you two were jabbing at each other and making each other ticked off and mad at one another. Maybe you were doing that. But at the same time, you, one person, cannot fight for the marriage for both of you. In the beginning, you can. At some points in the relationship, you will have to. But by and large, I'm talking about the big picture. I'm not talking about little pockets in your relationship where you're doing most of the fighting, where you're doing most of the cohesiveness and holding things together. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about big picture where things are pretty tumultuous, but both of you or one of you is very toxic. If one person starts to work on themselves and they're elevating and elevating and elevating, and then you have this person that is not elevating, they are still remaining toxic, at some point you're no longer equally yoked. And at some point it's going to crumble, crack, and fall anyway. So both of you need to be on your healing journeys from the trauma, from the feelings of abandonment, from the shame and guilt of all the things that you have done, that the secrets that we hold. All of that stuff needs to be worked out and literally shaken out of us before we get into these marriages, before we even get into the relationship. Because there's no way that you can open up your heart fully when you're carrying around all this junk. And now we got relationship on top of relationship on top of relationship on top of relationship, which means we got drama on top of drama on top of drama. And even baggage on top of baggage on top of baggage on top of baggage. So now we're bringing all of this junk and we're literally humping over like this. We're humping over. And we can't sit up straight. Can't sit up straight because you got too much stuff weighing you down. Too much stuff weighing you down. One person cannot fight for the marriage long term and keep things running. What usually happens is they find outside partners. They may stay legally married. They may stay in the same household, different bedrooms, same bedrooms, whatever. But an actual fulfilling or fulfilled marriage is not there. They may be staying together for the sake of the title, not looking bad to others, to outsiders, right? So that's a different story. Can't do it by yourself. And I heard Tony Robbins actually say this, which I wholeheartedly believe, which is, even if you believe that you need to leave the relationship, you should not do it for the sake of trying to jump into another one. You should leave the relationship because that is something that you know that is needed. Because if you try to leave the relationship and jump into another one because you're trying to get rid of all this stuff with him, you're only going to drag said baggage from previous partner with the next one. So you got to start working on you. You got to start releasing all that junk, getting rid of it, detoxing your whole mind, body, and soul before you get into another relationship. I wholeheartedly believe that. The sixth thing, I am now less judgmental of the things that I do, the things that I say, the people that I have in my life. And it really was judging married people before I was married. When you hear married people go through things, you're like, I wouldn't be putting up with that if I was married, or I wouldn't be doing X, Y, and Z if I was married, right? And so a lot of times we have a tendency to think about the word cheating in some capacity. And you may have heard or may have been the person to say, well, if you cheat on me, there's no way I'm staying, right? But this is before you get married. And then after you get married, now you're dealing with infidelity. You decide to stay. It's okay that you decide to stay, but I am less judgmental because now I realize there is no way that you can fully know what you're going to do in a situation unless you've been in that situation or currently are in that situation. So I'm less judgmental of the things that I'm saying that I'll never do with the head nod and all this other stuff, because a lot of times we're just young and dumb and don't really know, don't really understand the capacity, the hugeness of what we are getting into. Number 7, the 7th lesson that I learned is that I had to figure out that I had to forgive before I can move forward. And this is not only forgiving my partner for the things that I believe that he did to me, it's also me forgiving me for the things that I know I could have done better, for the way that I showed up, for me being annoying, frustrated, taking things out, taking things too far, right? All of the things that I wanted to forgive myself. And the biggest thing that I had to forgive myself for was not being able to break the generational curse and not be a part of the divorce statistic. It's the biggest thing that I wish had never happened for me. So I had to realize that I had to forgive myself for all of the stuff, but the major thing for me was not being able to break that generational curse. I had to forgive myself in order to be able to move forward and attract a healthier mate. You must forgive yourself. You must forgive your partner. You must forgive all of the people that did you wrong before you can fully move forward and be free in your area. Number 8, I needed to work on my weaknesses before I jumped into a new relationship. Most of us don't work on our weaknesses. We have a tendency to sweep those things under the rug because what we believe is going to happen is that the next person I meet is going to be the person in those areas of weakness, meaning yours, and that they're not going to surface. But I'm telling you, sis, as soon as you believe those areas of weakness are not going to surface, they're going to punch you in the face. And you're going to be like, I thought I was done with that. I thought I was healed from it. I ain't think I cared about that no more. But that trigger came back up. And that area of weakness that you didn't take care of is now smacking you right in the face, is now hindering the growth of your marriage or your relationship. Hindering yourself. Number 9, I had to realize that staying for the sake of not being judged by outside people was something I had to get over. Because those outside people was not paying my bills. Those outside people have a tendency, not 100%, but have a tendency to be dealing with something even worse than I was. I also had to own that this is my life. I'm not living for anybody else. So I needed to work on remembering that staying for the sake of not being judged by outsiders, by others, by my parents, by my sisters, by my friends and cousins or whomever, the people in my circle, I had to get over it. Can't stay for somebody else because we shouldn't be judging, lest we be judged, right? However, we know that we're human and we're flawed and we sin all the time. And we are and can be judgmental people. Number 10, I had to learn that I needed to set my boundaries in the beginning or very early on versus trying to wait till after and then saying that I need X, Y, and Z. Because how we set our relationships up, how we set our marriages up is how usually it's going to play out. Now, if you're with a growth-minded person and they're willing to do the things that you're asking them to after the fact, that's awesome. That's just usually not how it plays out. So you want to, and I had to learn to speak my standards early on. So I'm not trying to churn and shift the relationship completely around to fit now what I should have been doing from the very beginning. Because here's the thing, once you set your standards, the people that are not supposed to be there won't be there because they will not be able to meet them. They will be annoyed and frustrated and throw in the towel sooner than later. And you want it to be soon as possible. That way you're not wasting months and years and decades of your life only to end up in the same situation, which is a breakup, which is a divorce. The same situation. So don't be scared about losing the person. You need to lose them. You need to get rid of them as soon as possible. Because again, now you are actively decreasing the divorce rate by speaking your truth, speaking your needs, and then giving them the opportunity to say, I can meet them, or nah, that's too much. And that's okay. You have to be okay with the person that you're currently dating not meeting up to your standards, because you're not just looking for anybody. You're not trying to be found by just anybody. You're trying to be found by you're the one. You're trying to attract your mate. You're trying to attract your God-given person. You're trying to slow everything down so when the good person, when the great man comes to you, when he finds you, now you two are a match. That doesn't mean that you're not going to have ups and downs, but the level of being able to work through things together is completely different than trying to work things together with somebody who is very toxic, who does not understand how to build a healthy, sustainable, loving marriage. That's just not going to happen. Number 11, when things get rocky, don't make large purchases like a home, or even, and this is something that I personally did, I even decided not to have a child when things were super rocky, because I know children are not going to fix the issues that are there. So bringing children into a toxic relationship, into a toxic marriage, does not bring the two of you closer long term. That's not going to keep them. It's not. So I decided that there were no large purchases. So there were no homes, there was no condo, there was no cars, there was no large purchases. Definitely not with the both of our names on it. And we didn't have a child or children. So nothing like that. No toxicity. The children part was actually number 12. So I'm going to jump into number 13, which is don't take things personally. This was something that I really had to grapple with, if you will, because there was a lot of things that I did take personally. I thought it was literally a personal attack on me. Him trying to shut me down, but not realizing the things that he was dealing with and the way that he was dealing with said thing, most of the time had nothing to do with me. Could he have spoken to me better? Absolutely. Should he have spoken to me better? Absolutely. At the end of the day, the part that I could have tried to, because at this point, I don't know if it'll work, right? Which is, you know what? I see that you're feeling annoyed. Would you like to talk about it? Because what you're saying to me and how you're saying to me, I feel like this has nothing to do with the issue right now, right? So being mature enough to hear and see the annoyance, and based off of what we were talking about, the level of annoyance and frustration and just lashing out shouldn't be there. So me taking a step back to say, I see that you're acting different. Something else may be bothering you. Do you want to talk about the real thing that's bothering you, versus taking it personally and now we're in a battle? Not healthy. Not healthy, ladies and gentlemen. It's not healthy. So these are the 13 lessons that I learned from my first divorce. I'm hoping that what you heard from me is something that you can take from yourself and be able to digest it, to be able to use your God-given discernment on how to move closer or farther away from the relationship that you're in. Because what I'm praying for is for what I went through, for you not to have to go through. Because I truly believe that the thing that I went through was to help you not go through it. So if I can help you from the heartache, pain, frustration, and being a part of the statistic, then I want to help you. So please let me know which 1, 2, 3, 4 of these lessons you have learned, or that you're taking from to say, okay, this is something that I can work on. I don't want to have to deal with that thing. Let me know. Listen to what lessons I took from my first divorce, as well as seeing the areas that you can be better in, the areas that you need to slow down in, and really taking and reflecting on, should I continue to be in this relationship? Is this relationship healthy for me? Is this relationship that I see myself a part of long term? Is this a relationship with this particular person healthy, or is it toxic? And being able to make a clear decision about staying or going. So again, you don't have to become a part of the statistic, because these were the lessons that I learned. I learned them the hard way. It's not something that I want you to have to learn the hard way. I love you guys, and there's nothing that you can do about it. And I will see you next time. Deuces, y'all.